Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Find a Way Productions with your co-hosts Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What's happening, coaches? This is the Coaching 101 podcast. I'm Daniel Chamberlain. That over there is Coach Kenny Simpson. Coach, man, it's we're getting on through this offseason. I know we're talking offseason today as a topic. Have you closed out your clinics now, or are you still going at it?
No, we had our last clinic in Minneapolis kind of area last week. So we are moving hot and heavy towards spring football. I'm actually, if you're watching this live or if it comes up before Sunday, we're doing a Sunday workshop. One of the first, we're going to try to do monthly workshops, which basically is online and, cover different topics over spring football. So it's kind of a good topic for me to talk about on the podcast, might kind of get me ready. We're going to have over basically how we're going to install the gun tee. So I think we're about full on seats. We had 300 seats. Can you believe that? And that many guys are interested in hearing me talk about installing the gun tee during the spring. So that's going to be this Sunday. So we're moving towards spring football. I think I've got one more coach to get hired. I think we've kind of found the guy that our school likes. And so hopefully that'll get pushed through. And we'll finally have our staff and be moving right into 2026 football season. It's coming very, very quickly.
That's it's kind of a good place to be, getting into that spring ball. I know that, we're going to talk a little off-season day, so getting those guys hired in and building that staff alignment and all that is super big. I'm sure you're ready for the light at the end of the tunnel for that. Just kind of get back to ball, right? Just get back to football.
Yeah, that's one of the deals. I know we're going to talk about it today. As a head coach, I never really get to just focus on football except for just small increments. Spring is usually one of those times where I actually get a chance to, everything's kind of calm. We don't have a game for our spring. It's kind of like most people's probably summer if you don't have spring football. There's not a game coming up immediately except for a scrimmage that really we're just going out there trying to get better. So you kind of have some days here to really slow down and actually teach football to kids. And in my world, I don't get to do that very often. A lot of times I'm dealing with budgets or orders or coaches' gear or hiring coaches or a bunch of stuff we're going to talk about today. Actually, I want to do a real quick pitch. We got a lot of that in the head coach workbook. So luckily, I've been doing this for a while and being able to organize it a little bit. If you don't, man, as a head coach, you feel like you're drowning. And sometimes scheme and the fun parts of football you don't get to enjoy because you're just drowning in everything else. Like, kids make our job fun. Adults make our job suck. Like, I don't know if you know that, but that's probably a tweetable quote right there for you, Daniel. But that's kind of
quote of the day.
Yeah, and that's if you're in education or you're in coaching, and that's probably words to live by right there. Like, the best part of the job is the kids. The worst part of the job is usually any adult, because there's usually with an adult comes a problem. And I'm an adult and I bring the problem sometimes. So I'm not excluding myself from the equation here. Kids are usually the easiest part.
Yeah, I like it. Well, sweet, man. Well, let's knock out the real quote of the week here, and then we'll jump right into our sponsorship stuff.
Yeah, I don't think I can put that quote in a team themes book. So we're going to go with a different quote. So the quote is from James Clear. Team Themes Volume 6 will be coming out in July. I always put it right before the season so we have a chance to buy it. We do have Team Themes Volumes 1 through 5 available. And one other quick caveat here. In Iron Valley, which is my fictional book coming out May 15th, there's a back section of the book, because it's all fictional, but he does use team themes that has some different themes in there as well. So the quote is from James Clear. It says, "You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Your response is not about the moment. It's about the habits that you built before the moment." And we're going to talk about a lot of that today. We talk about off season. Have you built where your kids understand how to respond when something happens? Have you built where your coaches and you know how to respond when something doesn't go well? Because even if you win every game, there's going to come a moment where you're going to face adversity. Have you built clear systems to allow yourself to handle that? Have you built clear systems when you're outmatched, outgunned, outmanned, or are you just hoping some kid makes a play? That's usually not a very good place to be.
I really like that quote. We can kind of a play off of the, you don't rise to your level of your competition, you fall to level of training, or whatever that exact quote is. I don't know it by heart, but it's sometimes we forget that our systems are just that, right? It's what we kind of train by. So, and that's a really good one. Kind of make you think, like, you got to have a really good system in place so that you have something to fall back on. So if you're guy out there looking at what do I need to have, there you go, man. You gotta have something that you can fall back on.
I think a lot of
Um,
times coaches in the off season right now, you need to operate under worst case scenarios. Like this is the best time for you, not to be a negative or a pessimist. What happens if X, Y, or Z? What's my answer? We call that if then in our kind of terminology in our office. But if this is who we got to roll into the season with, and he's the guy, then what are we going to do? If this doesn't go well, then whatever it is. And this is the
yeah,
time for you to play out worst case scenario. A lot of young coaches, unfortunately, play out roses and a positive, whatever. And then when the negative happens, they don't know how to
they're not ready
respond to
for it.
that. And so a lot of times what I've learned is if you prepare for the worst, sometimes you get a reprieve, and those
Yeah.
are fun Friday nights. But when you get what you expected, you're ready for it.
We had a coach, and I think it was a military group, but I can't really remember if I saw it there or just somewhere else in my social media network. But talking about losing two quarterbacks this cycle to the transfer portal, and I think one was graduation, and the other one transferred out after he had put months into his development. It's like, what now? What do we do now? Because we don't have another guy. We definitely don't have one ready. This kid was supposed to be the answer. So, man, you better have those answers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. Let's talk to our sponsors real quick here. Obviously, first and foremost, Ace Sports over at acesports.com. If you've not contacted them, mark.bridges at acesports.com. Get a hold of Mark. Let him come in and kind of see your vision, see your dream, and he'll help you build that stepping stone path to get there. If you're a small school, if you're a big school and you just can, you've got enough for the booster club or the sponsorship to open the checkbook, you can build your dream this year, maybe next, kind of get things finalized. Ace Sports does a really good job of bringing your dream to life. So whatever that looks like for you, it may just be a video board. It may be something super fancy. Maybe you want waterfalls and fireworks and you want the works, right? You can get whatever package you need. Ace Sports can kind of make those happen. Best video board in the industry. Check out acesports.com or email mark.bridges at acesports.com. We'll talk about Doug's winning edge performance analytics. Definitely the next big thing for in-game advantage. If you're wanting to look at analytics, you're wanting to look at, remember, this is not AI. Okay. This is, and I'm sure it can be paired with it. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how much accuracy there is in AI yet in live action sporting events, but you got a couple guys on staff that can quickly input data. You can take a ton of stuff into your quarters or half times or whenever you're making adjustments. Maybe you're just on play calls. Maybe you need to look over and see what's hitting, what's not, what players really getting the extra yardage, who's explosive this game, what are they running the most of. It can do all that for you on the fly. It's basically a place to do charting. People used to do charting up in the booth, and I tried that this year with a bunch of papers flying everywhere, and this is just charting in the digital world. Okay, just
Mm-hmm.
tell you what's working, what isn't. But he's also this year has doing some foreshadowing for you. So you can put in all that same information off of that you're breaking down in Huddle or whatever you're using anyway. And you can put all that information on your breakdowns for your scouting report, and it's going to tell you what to expect. And Doug's actually worked out a form that's going to give you, like, it's going to be basically my defensive play call sheet is based off all this data that comes out of the film. So he's got an auto-populating form there that he's kind of working out the bugs out of. So it should be a good one for this year. And last but not least, our friends over at Blended Threads LLC. Email Morgan at blendedthreadsllc.com if you're trying to get your coaches hooked up with some nice gear, kind of get it at a little bit better price. And it doesn't matter if that's custom hats, custom shirts, polos, jackets, pretty much anything that you can think of, they can create. So once again, just call them, see what, or email Morgan@blendedthreadsllc.com, kind of see what they can get going for you today. Build a pro shop, get stuff for your booster club. Maybe you have a youth softball or baseball or football or flag or whatever team, you can kind of hook those up to. So holler at Morgan at Blended Threads LLC. All right, man. It's time to talk about the offseason. And what we're really looking at today is what exactly head coaches are doing during a football offseason. And this obviously something that I had some dealings with this year. And Kenny, I know you're going into year, but I don't even know how many years you've been a head coach now.
1,000, probably somewhere around 20, I would imagine.
Yeah. And there's a lot to it. There's a lot behind the curtain that people don't know. They don't know it's going on. And so let's just kind of jump into that. So what is a head coach doing? And this one's just kind of in program building, within the building or whatever. Kind of what are you guys doing as head coaches that, to help your program be better for next year or for the future?
Yeah, and I'll kind of just give a general answer for head coaches. I think every head coach is in a unique, different situation. Now, Dan, you kind of found that out. Like every situation is different, so there's not a one size fits all. That's why it's difficult to say do X, Y, and Z, and you're going to be successful. Because at your school, you might need to do K, L, and M. Maybe that's where you are. So I'll just kind of give you things that we kind of try to target. And again, that's why I try to put out a product. That's why we put out head coach workbook, head coach planner, not to tell you, hey, here's what I do. We give you some of that, but to help you create your own. Because if you can think about things on the front end, it's going to help you a ton on the back end. And it's really hard as a first-year head coach or a second-year head coach because you don't know what to think about. Like you don't know what's around the corner. And now you're having to think on the fly. They say every average coach makes probably like 1,000 decisions a day. And I would say a head coach probably makes 1,000,000 decisions a day, like small decisions. Unfortunately, they're going to impact a lot of people. And sometimes if you can pre-plan and like with the quote, you can kind of have a system in place that will handle some of those decisions so you're not having to make them constantly all the time. It makes your life a little bit easier. So I'll quit preaching and I'll give you some practical stuff. So obviously, if you're head coach right now in football, you need to be handling the weight room, whether you're handling it or it's been delegated to somebody you trust. But there's a system in place. I don't know if you know this. If your kids are bigger and faster and stronger than your opponent, your odds of winning go up significantly. So you're trying to get your kids bigger, trying to get your kids faster. You're trying to get your kids more athletic. I think, and again, this is my opinion, we spend a lot of time trying to work on installs and football stuff when we should be spending 90% of our time in the off season focused on lifting weights, running and getting faster, becoming more athletics. You got plenty of time to put the football in. You got plenty of time. If you're worth your salt as a coach, you got plenty of time. NFL guys don't start till August. You got time to get the football in. But this is probably the best time where you can spend a ton of time in the weight room, working on relationships with kids where the football is not involved. So I'm blessed to have 3 or 4 guys that have run my weight room for me that are like experts. I had Derek Smith a couple of years ago, and then I had Brock May, and then I had Price Holmes, and now Tim Childress is handling it for me, and I just hired Dale Giller. And so I've been able to bring in these really good weight guys, which has allowed me to allow them to do their job and talk to kids one-on-one and try to because I'm not going to have that time in the season. Like in the season, I'm not going to have the time to just go hang out with a kid and ask him questions about what's going on in his life. Like I'm not going to have that time. He's not going to have that time. And so I'm going to try to do that when I've got time during the off season. So kind of bleeding into it, I think you got to build relationships. There's going to come times during the season when those relationships are going to be strained. Think about if you're married, you better put a lot of pennies in the piggy bank because there's going to come a time you're going to do something stupid and you're going to need that lady to forgive you. And the same thing with any relationship. You better build some camaraderie So the first time you got to come down and hammer that kid for not making a down block or running the right route or whatever, the kid goes, okay, at least I know coach is doing this because he cares about me. It doesn't guarantee success, gives you a better chance. So we want to build some relationships. We want to develop players. We're going to talk about that, I know, later on here. I think you got to develop coaches or hire coaches. I mean, that's all going on during the offseason. Which coach is going to run which role? Which coach, is wanting to kind of further his career. And so it's not just you're going to be the O-line coach, you're going to be the whatever coach. Give them other jobs. Like, hey, we got a really good young coach on my staff, Logan Johnson. I'm super excited about him. He's handling our lifter of the week. He had the idea. We went and got some gift cards. He's taking the picture. He's watching which kid is the lifter of the week. Something I probably never would have done. Does it probably amount to a win? Probably not. But it's a good thing for our kids. It's a good thing for a young coach. It's an easy job. Like, it's a fun job for him. Let him do it. And so find things these coaches can do that aren't just scheme. Maybe it's a coach, hey, I want to get shirts for our kids. I want to have a 1,000-pound club shirt. Or I want to have go do all that stuff. I mean, I don't know if any of that really equates to winning, but it's good for your kids. So why say no?
Yeah.
Because during the season, I'm going to say no a lot. So if I can say yes to some things, let's try to say yes and let our coaches explore different things. We're probably never going to run spread. But if I got a coach who really wants to go dig into some spread concepts, it's the off season, go grow as a coach.
Yeah.
No problem. You want to go visit with this staff that they're running mesh, which we're probably never going to run, go ahead. It's not going to hurt you to learn that. Just make sure you're putting your time into what we are going to do. And I kind of lead into that one, scheme. Like, this is your chance to explore scheme tweaks that will match our kids. You see them every day. You probably know we're going to be better at this position than that position. Or, we've got these 2 or 3 special kids that we need to feature. Or on defense, guys, we're going to be very young in this area. So what are you doing in your scheme to fit that? Or if it's a good thing, what are you doing in your scheme to highlight that? Like, okay, we're bringing back a 3-year guy at quarterback for me this year. What are we doing to highlight that? Are we just going to give him the same stuff he's been doing for 2 years? No, we need to put more on his plate. He can handle it. So that's what you got to do in your scheme. I don't think you need to overhaul. Like, this year we're spread, this year we're flex bone, this year we're air raid, this year we're wing tee. That's unhealthy. But what inside of your scheme can you tweak every year? That's very healthy. That's fitting your scheme to match your players. And so you need to be working on that stuff now. And then the last one I put on here was give the kids an off season. Like, I'm a dad now. I'm tired of 24/7, 365 travel basketball, travel baseball, 7-on-7 football. Like, I'm tired of that stuff. Let these kids be kids. Give them an off season. We won't touch a football till April. They're the reason. Would I like to touch a football and go out there and throw the ball around? Yep. But we don't do it on purpose because I want those kids to leave at 3:30 and go do what kids do. Go be involved and go play basketball, go play baseball, go do track, go do soccer, go do something else. A lot of times we preach multi-sports, but we practice one sport year round. You can say all you want about we want multi-sports. If you're encouraging or having a travel team, you're not multi-sport. You're not.
Okay.
My daughter went through this. We're multi-sports. Well, we have travel volleyball during basketball season. I don't think you're really multi-sports because you're not practicing what you're preaching. My daughter played basketball. We have a travel basketball during soccer season. Well, what are you encouraging her to do? You're forcing her to pick.
Yep.
You're forcing her to pick. So as football coaches, I would encourage you guys, allow your kids an off season. Because during the season, I don't want them burn out in December. I want our kids still hungry for football in November and December. Those are the games that matter to me. And if we're doing stuff February through December, I'm burnt out. I can't imagine how our kids are.
For sure. Yep. All great points. Things that I would add is this is a great time to get some coaching evaluation done. One thing that during the season, it doesn't feel like there's a free time to get anything done. You talked about coaching development. You've got to get them evaluated and let them know their weak spots, their strengths now, so they can go out and get better at coaching in the off season, because there's just isn't enough time when we once that first kickoff happens, or even fall camp, really. So get your coaches evaluate them, let them know what they need to work on. Kenny, you talk about letting them go out and look at other schemes. That's fine too. Whether it's something they can add to the program later, or just making them a better foundational coach. Put them on the other side of the ball if they're a defensive guy, have them learn some offense, because you may see some of that stuff, right? That's one good thing about people on your staff knowing mesh, and you're a gun T guy, is, hey, defensively, when we see this, we'll be able to diagnose what it is they're running. Then we probably know how they're reading it, because everyone's doing mesh the same. And so we'll know, I talk about having a 5 or 6 times a game, the defense can take a shot and go get a ball, go make a big game-changing play. Maybe that week or two that a coach spent in the offseason learning another scheme makes that possible, right? It gives them an idea of when that can happen. Good time to work through friction points. We don't really have time during the season for a coach to come in and be disgruntled and get any real time to set aside to work through those things. So this is a great time for that, right? What were you upset about last year? Did you not have a role that was big enough? Were you overwhelmed? And we didn't have the people to push the work off to. So great time for friction points. Maybe it is admin. One thing I heard the admin up there saying was the principal said, hey, we don't like kids being out of school a lot. So if you're taking off a bunch of extra time to get to a game, to be there 5 hours early, like that's not realistic. We need kids in front of teachers so they can get that educational time. So having, those are friction points you can work through now. You can kind of reorganize and figure out how are we going to not walk in those same traps next year. It's a great time to celebrate those around your program. So look, during the season, we have players of the week, and we talk about, I think we did at Bristol last year. We had or 2 years ago, I think we celebrated like 6 kids or 8 kids or something a week, just trying to celebrate kids, right? And that's wonderful. But when it comes to your coaches, you don't have a coach of the week. You don't get to talk about the coach that made the big call of the week, or who organized the uniforms that week and make us look good. That's not something you realistically do. Everybody's just got their nose to the grindstone and they're just busting things out. So it's a good time to celebrate those. Celebrate the band director for, maybe they just worked with you a little bit and didn't charge the field at halftime and try to hurry you off. Or maybe they did hurry off before the start of the second half of homecoming, or whatever it is. Talk through that stuff. Celebrate the other people that may not be putting the uniform on Friday nights to ensure that your program's looking to go in the right direction. And you kind of mentioned it here, the new ideas. We call this in the military, we call it the good idea fairy. The good idea fairy is the one that flies around and bops people on the head in the middle of a meeting when they need to say something to look good. And now we're all doing dumb stuff because someone got bopped on the head by the good idea fairy. Okay. There's nothing wrong with the good idea fairy if it's something that you want to do on your own time. When you start taking up other people's time and you're wasting time, that's when we all hate the good idea fairy. We're making changes just for the sake of making changes because so-and-so needs a bullet point on their evaluation. Okay. Try not to do that. However, this is the time when you can cut guys loose and say, go have all your good ideas now. Because when it comes to season, we know we don't have that time allotted to try to run through a bunch of this stuff. And now I've got to tell you no to something, and now you're upset. So now's the time. Go out. You want to do different color shirts every week for practice? This is the week to get that set up. Is that realistic? You want to add a new fancy. I remember one year at Stillwell, I added a drum group. We had a native group come in and play drums before. It was the worst idea I ever had. It was a wonderful idea. The execution was not good. They thought they had like 20 minutes to play. They had 3 minutes to play. So you can imagine the refs are standing there like, well, we're about to throw a flag because we can't get the drum group off the field, right? Great idea. Terrible execution because I tried to put it in season. That's something we could have ironed out in the off season, had a lot more time to converse and get all the details lined out. So good idea fairy is great now in the spring and the off season, as long as you've got time to, it's kind of the same thing. Evaluate those, prioritize them, what stays, what doesn't, cut the rest loose. Yeah. So let's jump into part 2 here, Kenny. And that's kind of okay. So we've talked about player development a little bit. And I think everyone's in the weight room now. Like, if you're not, shame on you as a coach for not having the weight room going, for not having a good program. You can't always trust the in-school guy, that's supposed to be running weights during the school. If you're not him, maybe you can't trust yourself. I don't know. But you better have an idea of how you're going to get your kids better for football season. And we know that this means working with other in-season coaches, because just because it's your off-season doesn't mean those kids aren't working with someone else. So maybe you have to work around that. I know I've heard you before say, Kenny, if you expect another coach to lift during their in-season, you better be lifting during yours, which is big time. So you may have laid the foundation for this last fall based on your actions then. But let's kind of talk about beyond the weight room here. What can we do for player development, or what our head coach is doing for player development?
Yeah, there's lots of things you can do. Obviously we pump team themes on this podcast every start of the episode. And I'm not suggesting that you have to run exactly what we run, but it's an easy curriculum where you go 5 minutes a day and you talk about a theme for a week. And I've already produced all the hard work for you. I got all the videos queued up and all the quotes queued up for you. There are other people that have done the same thing. You don't have to get mine, get theirs. But I think there is a place to teach lessons, whether it's structured or it's something you just kind of do when the opportunity arises. I think you need to have conversations with your kids about growing them as people, and this is a good time to do it because during the season can be really, really difficult. So again, you can do team themes. You can make it more natural, but you need to figure out who your leaders are. Daniel and I are actually in the process of writing a book that'll come out, I'm sure, probably in a year or two, but it's called Who the Room Follows. And the idea being identifying who your natural born leaders are and trying to cultivate them so that they know how to wield the power that they've been naturally blessed with in a good way. Because a lot of times you have kids that are naturally leaders that don't really know what to do with that. And sometimes they can be very detrimental because they are doing it the wrong way. So you need to figure out who those kids are and then empower them and teach them how to kind of use that influence in a good way. I think you have to allow them, again, to have an off season. Allow them to, hey, we're here, we're going to lift, but this is not a 24/7, 365, we're going to do everything we're doing here, like program wise. I think a lot of times we as coaches take credit for maturity. Like, for example, kids are in the weight room. This kid in the season went up 90 pounds on his squat. Well, he also grew 4 inches and gained 20 pounds because puberty kicked in, or this kid has become a great leader. Well, he's not 14 anymore. He's 17 and maturity has kicked in. We have to guide that. But we also have to recognize sometimes you just have to wait for maturity to kick in. Like, as a coach, sometimes we try to shove things through that a kid is not ready for. And you just need to kind of guide them and just keep waiting.
Yeah.
That's why some kids start as sophomores and some kids start as seniors. There's maturity. It's not like we coached them different or we were a better coach for this one than we were for that one. Some just mature at a different rate. So while we are pushing them, we also have to recognize there's a little bit of patience required on our end, that we have to allow these kids to kind of slowly mature to where they want to be. And when they get there, we give them a little more responsibility and we keep encouraging and we keep pushing them along. And just recognize some kids will never get it. And you hope they get it after they left your program, that they remember something and it clicks when they're 25. Some kids, they'll get it at 15 and they're fun to coach. Some kids it takes till they're 18, and so you just have to kind of keep working with these kids and understand they're all going to kind of grow at different rates. But you got to give them opportunities to do that. Like, they're not going to grow if you're not giving them opportunities. Maybe there's 3 kids in a group in the weight room and you're in charge of this 3. And all that means is you make sure they go to the correct rack each day. Maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's hey, our offensive linemen all want to stay after school and they want to do, they want to get on the ladder and work footwork for 10 minutes a day. And this senior's in charge of that. Maybe whatever that is, there's lots of different opportunities you can create for kids to lead. And you need to create those in good environments where somebody's overseeing them, but you're giving kids opportunities to lead. And sometimes that means you even do things they want to do, even if you don't want to do it. Like, I don't really prefer music. Like, that's just, I didn't grow up with that. It's not my world. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but that's what our kids want. And if we're getting the work done, we're going to keep it appropriate. We're going to delegate that out to a senior. As long as it's not distracting us, we're going to let him handle that. So there's opportunities there to give kids opportunities to lead. And you need to do that in small ways so that when you need them in big ways, they're ready. I think also competition's big. Competition's big. You get kids to compete with each other, whether that's a weight room board of here's our top lifters, our top runners, whether that's one-on-one competitions you host. I've seen people do like, different competitions they have with kids. I like to pair them up when they run. Like, that's kind of how we do things is we'll make sure we pair up our kids are about equal ability in any races that we do, any kind of speed work that we do. It could be anything where they've got to compete, because I want to see who shrinks to competition, who rises to competition. Like our quote, you're going to shrink to the level of what you are when the moment comes. And so I want to see which kids handle that. But also on the flip side of competition, you also got to have camaraderie. Like, yeah, we're going to compete, but at the end of the day, we are a team. We need each other. So what are you doing to kind of encourage that? Football, I think, is the last sport where you have that opportunity, because not everybody touches the football. You got kids from all shapes and sizes. You got kids from all demographic backgrounds, from economic backgrounds. And it's the one place where we can still teach our kids that, hey, despite what Twitter and Fox News and CNN says, we can all get along.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to figure out ways to encourage and embrace that diversity and push it forward. So you want to compete, but you also have to teach the other end of it. Hey, we're all wearing the same color jersey. Whether I'm wearing 68 or you're wearing number 1 or you're running a 4.5 or I'm running a 7.5, we need each other. So you got to figure out ways to kind of preach both. Compete to make each other better, and complete, make each other a full team.
I love it, man. Yeah, that competition is something I still remember from school. I remember it more than most of the, pre-game meetings and weekly, game plan talks. All that stuff was so week by week. But that competition stuff in the offseason, like, that's something I'll forever remember. I specifically remember a guy named Ricky Keller who was who played on the team with me, and we had the most chaotic wrestling matches, right? We used to just get on the mat and just wrestle and just compete, physical on physical, and getting after it. Contact prep, if that's what you want to call it. I don't know. The rules were different back then too, so I don't know what you can get away with nowadays, but wasn't anybody getting hurt. We were just competing physically. Who can pin the other one or whatever. That stuff is stuff I still think about to this day. Is we had fun, we competed, we got better. You almost set that pecking order. Like, you're seeing where you belong, physically and mentally. Can you outthink your opponent in the heat of the moment? Like, it was a ton of fun. So competition's there. I think football IQ development, and this is one that, it's hard. The rules today make it very difficult, and it depends on what your state associations allow. Developing football IQ it's not hard to sit in a classroom and watch film. It is hard to find the time to do that. We just said these kids need to have an off season, and you probably don't have them in a football class anymore because they're off at another sport. So when do you take that time away? Say, hey, we're going to develop some football IQ. Spring ball is a great time to do it. We'll all get very, kind of caught up in our install, getting our stuff put in, and we lose track of that football IQ stuff because we need them to know what we're going to be doing this year. So having a time for that set aside, if that is your football off-season class, If it is something you can work pre or post school, obviously depends on what the rules allow. Hell, this is where I struggled, Kenny, was just we want to increase football IQ. We want to have conversations about what do down blocks mean? What do pull kickers do? What is that concept? What's the concept of gap scheme football? But the state association may or may not allow installing. And so you got to be careful about, can I say the word power, but I can't say sword or whatever your word for power is, right? So what can I or can't I say to these kids? And that comes back to that alignment. You got to make sure that the guys above you and below you understand what you're doing so that they understand it fits or doesn't fit within the rules, whatever that looks like. Leadership development, you did a very good piece on that. The only thing I would add to what you said is evaluate them. If you're going to put them in these positions of leadership and you're going to give them chances to grow, you also need to give them feedback. And maybe you don't know what you're supposed to do. Maybe you don't even know what leadership really is. It's just yelling really loud when the game's on the line. Maybe that's leadership to you because that's all you were ever taught. So going out and getting coach development and what is formal leadership? How do we develop it? How do we teach it? How do we evaluate it? And then do that for your kids. So that might be, a 2-year thing for you. It might be you getting good at leadership this year and then you making kids better at it next year. Building relationships, and I mean this throughout all of the hallway, everywhere. And we'll talk a little bit more about this on the next piece, but you got to build those relationships with those kids. One of my favorite nights in the short off season I was with the team was my quarterback and some other seniors took my family to dinner one night and was just like, hey, let's go have some Mexican food. Like, awesome, right? We just got to have good conversation. Matter of fact, very little of it was about football. A lot of it was just seeing who they were as kids, as humans, who we were as people. I think that was really nice. I think anytime you can take the whistle off and allow them to take the uniform off and you can just go have conversations about what was college like for you. Talk about your military experience. Talk about raising kids. How'd you meet your wife, right? What is courtship supposed to look like as a good man? These are things that relationships are built upon, and they need to understand who you are as a person. Same thing with your parents, right? Get your parents involved in a way that has nothing to do with football. And I know we talked about that last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago. Take the whistle off, let them take the uniform off, and just go be people, and whatever that looks like. Maybe it needs to be a more formal event for you to do that because of rules. I don't know what your state rules are. Maybe you can just go to dinner as with the quarterback and his family. You don't necessarily have to have an agenda. And in fact, I would say you got to be careful because, politics can quickly take over what you're trying to have a good time. And all of a sudden you're talking playing time. Like, that's not what we're here for. Maybe you got to set that standard. You got to let them know up front. We're not here to talk playing time tonight. I just wanted to get the seniors out and go to dinner. Let's have a conversation about what's coming up. This is your last year in it. We often say stop and smell the roses, right? Kenny, you talk about it's hard to stop and enjoy a win because y'all got so good at winning. Now you're always just thinking about round 2 or 3 or 4 of the playoffs. Teaching those seniors, hey, this is the last first time you'll ever start a season. This is your last 7-on-7, your last spring ball, your last fall camp. So making sure they understand what life looks like as you're moving forward. And the freshmen too, you can have those same conversations, building those relationships with what is the expectation around the program, but what is life like for you outside of football right now? And the last piece here for this one is multi-sport coordination. And you talked it earlier. If you're trying to host a travel team or a league ball or this or that at the same time that you're telling kids go be multi-sport, that's hard to do. Now, there is something to giving the kids that don't make teams. They can't go be a productive member of any of those sports. Having something for them to do is great. And I don't know what that line looks like. Because they're going to, if you make it right, you do it right, they're going to start having fun. And it almost starts to recruit the kids who are on the bubble in these other sports. Now you are taking away from their multi-sport time. So you got to be careful and ride that line. I don't know where it is. Just do what's right for the kids. I think you'll be okay. But work with those other coaches. Go to other games. Go to those other sports, right? Like go cheer them on. Yeah, keep kids engaged. Keep kids they need an off season, but you want to make sure they're supporting their brothers in the other sports and whatnot too. So, and you need to do the same. Be there as a support, not as a not as someone who's taking away from those other sports. Last part here, Coach, and this one's going to be the fun one. What other chaos kind of comes with the job that nobody sees? So this isn't any book. It's because no one wants to talk about it because they'd scare off all the future head coaches. So what do those things look like?
Yeah, I thought about posting like a daily schedule. I thought that would be kind of interesting, like what my daily schedule looks like when it's in the heat of it. Luckily now I've been doing it for a bit, so you kind of get in a routine and you don't even think about like, oh man, that was a long day, But basically, if you're the head coach, these are just off the top of my head things that I've kind of pulled up that on a daily basis or at least a weekly basis you're probably dealing with. Number one, you got to deal with grades. That's the one big thing about this is not every athlete enjoys English. I don't know if you know that or not, but a lot of them actually hate it. I mean, I did too when I was in English or Spanish or whatever it was. And so you're dealing with a lot of times helping a kid understand that, this is something you may not really find value in now, but you need to do the best you can in it. So you may have to help find tutors, or it may be a discipline issue. I know you don't like this. I know you don't like Miss Such and Such, but we expect you to go in there and behave, and we expect you to do X, Y, and Z. And so off season, you're kind of ultimately it's going to fall to you if you want these kids to be eligible. You want to help them graduate. You want to help them do a lot of things you can do. Generally, athletes don't always, enjoy. Sometimes you get lucky, but they usually don't enjoy academic work all the time, and you have to help in that world. So that's one thing. Money, what's your budget look like? Everybody's different. What do you guys have for a budget? What can you spend? What do you need to go raise? Does that include fundraising? What is this going to look like? And so there's a whole bunch of things you got to kind of figure out in the money world. And everybody's different. Again, that's why we put out that head coach workbook is here's a frame. And then you need to fill in your situation. Is your situation you got to raise every dollar you guys have? Is your situation you're responsible for this? I mean, how are you going to bring money in? And a lot of us as coaches, we're not accountants. We didn't go to school to be an accountant. We didn't go to school to be a marketer. We didn't go to school to be a fundraiser. We didn't go to school for any of that stuff. But here you are, and you better figure it out. And that's one of the reasons we've tried to put out some books on fundraising, head coach workbook all over at the website to try to help guys, because that's not something we're really trained in. Ordering equipment and inventory. Daniel, you're military, so it probably was natural to you.
Yeah.
I was never in the military. My brother was, my father was. I'm not. That's not natural for me to mark down all our inventory and what equipment do we need and how many size helmets do we have and have we got our other kids sized and okay, we also have the junior high kids and what are we going to order for them and and just going through and there's 1,000 options with people trying to make money and you got to kind of figure out, okay, what do we need? Do we need to spend the money on this? Can we get by with that? What's the deal on all the equipment deals? So, and then dealing with admin. I think that's the one thing most head coaches struggle with because there's one or two ways that you go about it. Number one, most head coaches are scared to death of their admins. So they won't ask for things. Young coaches, especially. First time you get on the job, admin tells you to do whatever, and you're scared to go ask them and talk to them about things because you like your job and you don't want to make the boss mad. Or the opposite is you go in there and you go in there and don't understand that they see a picture you don't see. Like the admin, they want you to be successful. They hired you. Of course they want you to be successful. But they have a larger issue they're dealing with. Like they're dealing with the whole school. They're dealing with all things that you may know nothing about. And if you go in there and you're completely selfish about your program, there's going to be a problem. There's going to be a problem. And so as coaches, we got to kind of straddle that line of we have to fight for our program because that's what's important to us. But we need to understand that our admin has to deal with not just us, but everything else. And we need to make sure that we're trying to see things through their eyes. So when they tell us no, maybe we can understand it and have an understanding there and have a conversation. And that's really difficult at every level. And I'll say that's the superintendent. That's the main boss. Sometimes the boss in the classroom, the principal, they may not even be an athlete, and they don't like you. Like, you're not being paranoid. They don't like you. Like, they deal with sports because they have to deal with sports, depending on what school you're at. I'm blessed to be at one where it ain't that way. But I've been at ones before where sometimes the principal, no offense, he was the nerdy kid who got picked on by the athletes, and that's still manifesting itself as an adult. So you may be having to navigate that. So there's a lot of things you have to navigate as a head coach that they're unique to the situation you're in. I think working with other sports, Daniel's kind of hammered home, so I won't hammer too much. But what are you willing to accept? What if a kid is like he might legitimately go play college baseball, and so he's got 15 showcases in the summer he's going to go to try to further his career. So he's going to miss half of your workouts. Are you okay with that? Like, I'm okay with that, but have you decided if you're okay with that? How are you going to explain that to the other kids? There's a lot of things when you start working with multi-sport athletes where fair is not always equal. Like, what you have to kind of do is deal with case by case by case by case. And sometimes as a head coach, we get tired of doing that. So we draw this line in the sand, and then we alienate kids that probably could have helped us. So you got to kind of figure out where your line is, what you're willing to do. Get your schedule set, what your schedule going to look like for practice, what your schedule going to look like for workouts, what your schedule going to look like. You may be in a state where your coaches all have like real jobs. They're not just teachers like they are in the South. So you got to navigate, how's that going to look? What about if you don't have an athletic period? How's that going to look? What if you're in bad weather? What's your bad weather plan? What are all these plans? Well, now's the time to do that. Like, now's the time to kind of think through, here's what we'll do if we have a stormy week where I can't even get on the field Tuesday and Wednesday.
Right.
Where are we going to go? What are we going to do? How are we going to modify that practice? And that's going to look very different depending on what school you're in. Mention inventory. I hate inventory. I hate it. Bad hate it. But you got to do it. Otherwise, you're going to go to the admin and ask for money, and they're going to be like, well, what happened to all the other stuff you had? And you're like, well, we had it, and I walked off. And so you got to kind of figure that stuff out, or it doesn't go very well. Social media. Like, if you're good at social media, great. If you're not, find somebody who is. Like, you got to promote your program. That's not a negotiable in today's world. Like saying, well, our kids will get recruited if they're good enough. That's not acceptable anymore. Like, you have to promote your kids. You have to put them out there. Like, I think probably at least 4 times a week, I'm trying to reach out to college coaches about my players. I'm trying to help them use their highlight film. I'm trying to use my social media to help them get recruited. And then probably 4 or 5 times a week, I'm trying to just put out general stuff on our Facebook to our fans about our kids and what we're doing. If that's not you, that's fine. Find someone who can do it for you.
Or have a guy.
But find somebody who can do it for you. Make sure it gets done. Because if you can put out a lot of positive about your kids and promote them, I think you're going to be a place where it goes to point number 2. You got to recruit your halls. I don't know where your state is. Maybe you're in a state where you can just recruit the area. But you got to put things out where kids want to be part of your program. Social media is a big help with that. It's not the end-all, be-all. But it helps. It helps put it out there. Here's who we are. Here's what we're doing. Here's why you want to be part of our program. And that recruits the hallway. It recruits potential students that might be moving into the area. It just kind of puts out a positive vibe about your school. So we try to keep it positive. Even when you want to get on there and talk about an official or an opponent or whatever, that's rule 1 on social media. Only positive. Only positive and only about our kids. That's all we're going to talk about. Yeah. Sharing athletes, we've already kind of mentioned that, so I won't hammer home too on that. But how you handle in the offseason, if Johnny is a really good basketball player, he's also your quarterback. You both need him. He's going to help you win games. He's going to help basketball win games. What does that look like? How is that going to go? What is acceptable to you? Because you got to think, your optimal situation is probably not the basketball coach's optimal situation. So there's got to be a collaboration and an agreement somewhere in the middle so that you can both do what's best for this kid. And that's got to be talked about during the off season.
Absolutely. You kind of talk about setting a schedule. I'll go. I think that big annual calendar is one that it took up more time than I thought, just because I already had a good plan. But it's not it's easy to write stuff down. It's easy to put stuff on a calendar and say we're going to go do this thing. What's hard is having a plan, and then you talked about these other sports have, you want to have a youth football camp, but basketball is having their youth football or youth basketball camp, and soccer is having their youth camp, and you've got all these things. So you've got to manage not only the time, is that date available? Is somebody else already using it? But just like fundraising, if you charge for a camp, the parents are tired of coming out of pocket for stuff, right? So you've got all these things you want to sign up or have to sign up for, but so do the other coaches. And so you have to make sure that your calendar and their calendar makes sense time-wise, not taking too much of the kids' off-season away, too much of their summer away, and then not forcing parents to pay for yet another thing. Maybe you're at a big school and this isn't really a concern for you because maybe the kids are kind of specialized, right? Like, no, my kid's going to go to football stuff. He's not going to the off-season basketball or baseball or whatever. But maybe you're at a small school and you're sharing all those kids. So be ready for that. But also the logistics behind those things. It's nice to want to have a 3-day youth football camp. Who's making the T-shirts? Who's serving the food? How are you getting Gatorade to them? Are you opening concession? Who's going to come? What coaches are going to come teach it? Do they have summer plans already? So how are you doing that, right? There's lots of logistics that go into that. Even the big events you and I talk about, Kenny, the mother-son date night and father's, son retreat and all these things, you got to have the logistics behind them. Who's driving the stinking bus? Who's getting us from point A to point B? Food is always a big one. Who's handling, I was working for camps. And it's like, how do you get rooms for all those kids if you go travel for camp somewhere? Who's making those phone calls? So logistics is a big one. And luckily I come from a logistics background, so it was easy to think through all those pieces, but I understand that not everyone does. So having that annual calendar, making sure that it's, once again, with friction points, you don't have friction points with someone else or with the parents or with school dates, whatever. And then logistics is a big one. I think booster club alignment, number one, how much control do you have of the booster club? How much are you told how things are going to be? This is your only time to really get to talk to them because you don't want them in your ear during the football season. So going and getting those big events set up. Are you having a golf tournament? Are you having a big fundraiser in the summer, in the spring, during the off-season time? Are they going to try to do one during season? So make sure that booster club alignment is there and whatever your booster club looks like. And maybe it goes by a different name. Maybe it's your quarterback club or your touchdown club. It's all the same thing. But, really getting them aligned to understanding when the season starts, when it's off-season, what you really need, how much you can assist. Maybe you're a voting member. Maybe you're not. There's a lot of stuff going on there. But that comes to connecting the dots for your fiscal year, right? How much money do we have? How much do we need to raise? What things are already earmarked for big events later? Maybe you're having to feed your players out of that booster club, or maybe you're going to 7-on-7 tournaments or camps or ordering clothes or all that stuff. How much of it comes out of your school account? How much comes out of your booster club account? And have I connected all those dots for the fiscal year? And we say fiscal year, that meaning the financial year. That may not start January 1st, right? It may be more of hey, our real fundraiser season starts at spring ball. That's going to be, we're going to have a spring game, and that's our first big fundraiser. So that's when our fiscal year restarts. Everything else is kind of last year at that point. In the government, it's in October every year. So the end of September, beginning October is a big change in monies. So maybe that's when yours, I wouldn't start yours in October in football, but maybe it is April, maybe it is May, maybe it's the end of the school year starts the next fiscal year for you. But understanding that and working through it, like you said, Kenny, we're not accountants by trade. Okay, so we're having to learn this stuff on the fly. So having that alignment with the people that do control it or help you manage it is big time. All right, man. I think we checked all the boxes today, Kenny. We've gone through quite a bit of stuff here for your off season. One last time, we'll talk about our sponsors, Ace Sports. Go to acesports.com, get video boards that will help you fundraise. I call it the cheat code in fundraising. We just talked a little bit about Booster Club there. A-Sports is a big one. It's a big income for you if you do it right. If you want to do it right, email mark.bridges@asports.com. Get him on your team, get him on board, meet with all your admin, meet with the people who are responsible for the monies, and kind of show him your dream, what you want to do. And, A-Sports can help you build that vision. Winning Edge Performance Analytics, talk to Doug. Go to the website, winningedgeperformanceanalytics.com. There's another one out there that's similar. So if you go to the website, you got to make sure that you see the logo in the bottom left of our screen here. Make sure you got the right logo. Make sure it's Doug Ringheisen that's controlling it. But anyway, Winning Edge Performance Analytics will help you have in-game breakdown. And then also, like I said, this year he's working to help with future opponent breakdown as well. And the last one is Blended Threads LLC for all your custom embroidery, screen printing, hats, sweaters, jackets, whatever you need done. Morgan can do it. So email morgan@blendedthreadsllc.com. Social media wise, I am at Coach Chambo OK on Twitter/X. You can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. Kenny, where are you at, sir?
All things FB Coach Simpson. So at FB Coach Simpson on Twitter, fbcoachsimpson@gmail.com, fbcoachsimpson.com. We just redesigned our front page on our website too. So all things fbcoachsimpson.com.
Love it. Podcast is at Coaching 101 Pod on X. We want to thank you for being a listener to the Coaching 101 podcast. We'll hope you join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing to the show so you'll always know when the new episodes are out. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up. No matter the situation, find a way.